Welcome to Season 6 of the RAG podcast. Now, for those of you who don't know, the RAG stands for Recruitment Agency Growth, and this show has been around since early 2019. And every week, we are obsessed with finding out how the world's most successful and innovative recruitment agencies and their founders have got to where they are today. In Season 6, alongside the founder's story and the inside information of that business, I also want to focus on the reality of today's economy. There is so much noise about this inevitable recession that we find ourselves in right now. And where it's going to go, is it really having an impact on the recruitment sector? Are they seeing any change in job flow? Are they seeing any change in candidate control or activity? What is going on? I want to find out. So every single week, I want to forget the propaganda, forget the noise. I'm going to speak to a real life recruitment owner and find out what is going on in their business. I will bring it to you every single Wednesday from 12 o'clock across multiple platforms. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the RAG podcast. On this week's show, I am joined by Ephram Stephenson. Ephram is the CEO of Collar Group, a recruitment group based in Australia with 9 offices and over 100 staff. Interestingly, Ephram only started the business in the summer of 2021 and sent his first invoice in October 2021. So we're talking about 14 months ago. In that time, he's grown a predominantly blue collar, but moving into white collar and exec search recruitment firm with a heavily retained model with new business and account management across the country. And he's got to over 100 people. Now, this is not Ephram's first venture into recruitment ownership. He got into the industry in Australia in 2000. I forget the exact year, but I know he's 24 years old. But he did 2.5 years as a consultant where he was a top biller earning a lot of money and then started his own business, which he had for 17 years. He's launched about 8 or 9 different recruitment businesses and brands within that time and has been hugely successful. He is one of the most energetic, enthusiastic owners I've ever met. You'll notice this on the podcast. There's been a few guests over the last couple of years that stand out with that no-holds-barred, high-growth energy with absolutely no ceiling on where they want to go. And this is another installment of that type of episode. So if you're in the blue-collar or in the white-collar recruitment space and you're looking for that, to hear about a story of someone with absolute ridiculously high growth plans, this is one for you. We do go into different areas of the business. The episode moves around quite a lot. There's lots of different things we talk about. We talk about his personal life as well. Super honest, super open, hugely inspiring. I loved every minute of recording it, and I hope you enjoy the show. So, without further ado, Ephram, welcome to the RAG podcast.
Thank you very much, Sean. Great to be here, mate.
Awesome. And it is currently 8:45 a.m. in the UK. And what is that, 7:45 p.m. where you are, is it? Or is it a bit earlier than that?
Earlier than that, 4:45 p.m.
Oh, yeah, you're on the West Coast, aren't you? So it's not quite as quite as ridiculous a time difference. Ephram, welcome to the show. I've heard, this is the first time we've spoken. We've had a bit of communication via other people, Pete Watson, all sorts. But I've heard some really cool things about what you've been up to, and I'm excited to get into it today. Before, I tried to give you an intro. I can never really do it justice. So before we get into your history and where you've been and all the rest of it, give us a bird's eye view of you and the company now. So how many people, how many offices, that kind of stuff, and your job right now today.
Thanks, mate. And so as of today, we've got over 100 full-time employees across 9 offices, all dotted around Australia, with 3 new offices coming online basically in the next 3 months. And to be honest with you, mate, we can't see any sign of slowing down anytime soon. And I think it's to do with the way we structured the business and I guess the amount of knowledge and experience that we've got under our belt. I mean, we've now got over 400 years worth of recruitment knowledge and experience under the Collar brand. So arguably one of the most experienced startups in Australia. Again, I guess, you look at the likes of Hayes, we've got north of 50 years worth of Hayes experience in the business, over 50 years worth of Chandler McLeod experience. Respect both those businesses so much. But I guess for me personally, Matt, I honestly believe there's a real changing of the guard. Obviously, when it comes to these top multinationals and international recruitment firms, and allowing basically, a startup or startups to really come in and previously would have been very difficult for them to pitch for some of these larger tenders or larger, basically large volume accounts. A lot of those businesses now, I think COVID's had a big part to play in that, but I think a lot of these decision makers now in some of these large multinationals, internationals are really, it's not necessarily all about price point anymore. It's actually about the service and the deliverables behind that, but also, I guess, the quality of the team that's actually servicing their accounts as well. So it's actually put us in really good stead, mate.
So how old is the business?
So the business actually launched officially on the 29th of July, 2021. For the first 2 months, it was all systems, processes, procedures. So this is my first blue collar, large volume business. All my other agencies. So I've co-founded 12 agencies in total. So this is my first, I guess, attempt at doing a large volume business. First 2 months, systems, process, procedures, obviously compliance, mobilization, speed to market, but without cutting any corners, and really just putting the candidate experience at the forefront of everything we do. You get that down pat, you get them right, that speed to market is just going to fly. So our first invoice went out in 15th of October 2021. So for all sense of what we are on the 6th of December now, obviously 2022. So a little over 14 months, or just a little under 14 months worth of solid trading. Already double-digit multi-million dollar business. And yeah, even from a headcount point of view, mate, we've got, I think there's, as of last count, about another 11 offers out at the moment that we're just waiting to hear back on.
So this is literally like bonkers growth. I've been interviewing a lot of the guys from the Storm brands. I don't know if you've listened to the ones with the Levin Group, and they're officially, I think, the fastest growing recruitment company in the planet. But you're not doing things much differently. So I want to find out how you've done what you've done. Let's go back a bit. So you're originally from the UK. You told me from Morecambe, Tyson Fury's land, and you moved out to Australia. What would you say? 20? Was it 20 years ago? Did you say?
24, yeah. So moved over as a backpacker, as a lot of us tend to do at the grand old age of 24. No recruitment experience. So my background was I worked for AXA Insurance for about 5 years doing outbound sales. So obviously insurance sales,
Mm.
newspapers. So basically account management, basically doing B2B. Me personally, and having now over 21 years worth of recruitment knowledge and experience, I'm going to be biased with this, sure, but I think outbound insurance sales and obviously B2B account management, selling newspaper, advertising space, obviously having that kind of client facing role, make a really good recruiter. So yeah, landed over here literally with about $500 to my name, mate. In fact, my best friend, Jamie, who worked with me for a number of years over here in Australia, actually paid for my flight over to Australia. So I came across with the intention of traveling around Australia and then going over to Fiji, then over to the States was the open-ended ticket, but landed in Sydney. First job I got was actually working on the Sydney Harbour Bridge, doing the bridge climbs. So
Right.
completely out of sales altogether. And then I was desperate. I loved basically Sydney. I was desperate to stay in the city, and obviously met my partner at the time, and sent my resume off to, no word of a lie, to about, hey, we're looking for a telemarketer. We're looking for an appointment setter to come in and actually make appointments for our recruiters to actually go out and actually then bring in the work. And we'll pay you $13.50 at the time, and we'll give you 1% of all gross profit that you generate. And I did that for about 2 weeks, mate. And I was making the appointments, but their consultants were coming back and saying the leads weren't qualified, and they're not interested in using agencies. And obviously, being from a strong sales background, I beg to differ, and I approached the directors and said, "Look, let me have a go doing what these guys and girls are doing." And they said, "Well, if we do, it'll be commission only." I said, "Well, what will that look like?" So they offered me 50% of all gross profit that I generated, and again, going from $13.50 an hour to, fortunately for me, mate, my background's property construction. Dad was in construction, as I said, obviously earlier. I lived in South Africa, lived in Jordan, lived in Harare, in Zimbabwe. Dad was always around in construction. Grandfather was in construction, so always had that passion for construction. And I started their first construction desk from scratch, and I was the top biller of the business from the first month. For the 24 months that I was actually in the business, and I went from, again, earning 13.50 Obviously, an hour to my first month of bill just shy of $40,000, so taking home a paycheck with just shy of $20,000 was enough to get me hooked into recruitment. That's for sure. And again, as a backpacker, arriving in the country with about $500 to my name, it obviously allowed me to have a
What do you think?
lifestyle that I would normally been able to have from Morecambe.
What do you think put you like? What made you? What made that possible for you? What do you put it down to be able to to get into an industry? All right, you had telesales experience. I know loads of people who've worked in telesales. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to turn around and perform at that level. So, what did you do, or what do you think, to be at that level?
Well, I think for me, mate, it was more so just thinking outside the box. And, no disrespect to the team that were around me, but it was more so, things like using a fax machine, mate, right? Using a fax. So what would happen is basically every Friday we would get the Sydney Morning Herald. The Sydney Morning Herald would actually advertise the jobs of all the companies that were advertising. But that wasn't actually put to public or put out to public till the Saturday. So I was always getting it on the Friday, and I was basically, sending faxes out left, right, and centre, just offering our services. And that actually proved to be a really successful kind of revenue stream for me, because again, nobody was really using that.
Right.
And I think these companies that had spent hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars on an advertisement to not actually get any response, but all of a sudden they're getting a fax through from a recruiter basically saying, we've obviously got a number of candidates who meet the profile, or we personally believe would be suitable for the business. Um, that's really what I think gave me, I guess, gave me the head start in recruitment. And again, having the product knowledge. All my friends, obviously, you're from up north, mate, and growing up at school, all my mates were either doing apprenticeships, where it's carpentry,
Mm.
whether it's an electrician, plumber, whatever the case may be. So I kind of knew some of the terminology, and I think that's what was really missing in the property construction space. Especially in Sydney. I mean, it was only a Sydney-based role. So again, it was more that solutions focus, going out there. What are your pain points? And absolutely, price point was critical at the time. There was a lady called Louise Clinton from Hayes, who honestly, mate, she literally had Sydney wrapped up. She was the number one biller. But what I found was, when I was speaking to companies, Hayes were going in at a very flat minimum, I guess, percentage. So for me, it actually gave me quite a bit of wriggle room there to obviously just go in and again position into it in a different type of approach. And I think having a name like Ephraim with a northern accent is always a good conversation starter.
For sure. Where does that name come from?
So it actually originates from Jordan. As I say, my old man was working in Jordan before I was born. I then went to, obviously, we moved over there after I was born. But Ephraim is a really common name. It's a Hebrew name,
Right.
and it actually means fruitful. So he liked the sound of it. So instead of Ephraim having an I in, took the I out. So it's Ephraim.
Yeah.
And again, mate, it's, doesn't matter where I am. It's, sorry, what did you say? Sorry, what's your name?
Yeah.
So again, it's just what and I think having obviously a northern accent, as I say, mate, is something that certainly put me in good stead to have some of those more difficult conversations, a bit of an icebreaker as well. So
Yeah.
it's not all so serious. And then again, sharing the story with some of these clients about my background, where I've come from, and they could see the passion. I mean, I don't expect to know who these two people are, but two of the most successful entrepreneurs in property and construction, and also within the civil infrastructure space in Sydney. One would be a guy called Sid Fisher. Sid Fisher, won the Sydney to Hobart, won the America's Cup. Basically, he was in his 80s and still racing the Sydney to Hobart. But I was fortunate enough to actually land him as one of my first clients, and he invited me into his boardroom in Sydney CBD, and mate, he was just such a pillar of knowledge and experience, and somebody that I really respected and looked up to. So he kind of took me under his wing from a product knowledge point of view, and introduced me to quite a few of his clients. And another chap is a guy called George Gassane, who arguably has got one of the most successful, I guess, civil contracting businesses in Sydney. And same again, like, he'd never used a recruiter. He liked my name, and he'd always call me Ephram on the phone, and Ephram blind down the phone to me. But a spade was a spade, and I think for me it was a really big learning curve. That, okay, if I can get meetings with these two types of individuals, and they're willing to listen to me, then I've got a real opportunity here. And again, for me, the money incentive behind recruitment. I literally went 24 months without having to do one replacement, mate. I was a top biller in the business from the first day I joined to, literally the day I walked out of the business. And the only reason why I left that business, and I've said this time and time again, is they just got too greedy. Basically they set me off on a commission only model, which is 50%. We all know that's not a sustainable business model if you're looking
Yeah.
to scale a business. But by the time I exited the business, I had, about 15 people all reporting into me. The property construction space was arguably their biggest revenue stream. but they were paying people's salaries before paying me my commissions. So I made the call. I walked away from about $40,000 in commissions, and set up my first business, which was the company called Design and Construct, which I went on basically 17 and a half years. I had that, grew that to Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, London, one shareholder, one director. Brought in a VC, brought in some investment, rebranded the business. That's now trading as Evolve Talent. And again, in its own right, a very successful recruitment agency. Certainly do north of 100 mil turnover this year. So to also kind of have that experience growing a startup from scratch, which really came off a frustrated idea of a company not looking after me and over promising and under delivering, was all about that service quality. I mean, we won Recruitment International Award, best training in Australia, LinkedIn most socially engaged businesses. I know you're a big advocate of LinkedIn, mate. LinkedIn most socially engaged business 3 years in a row. We're the only recruiter, obviously, who could actually boast that. They don't do that award anymore. No. Albeit I did have a really interesting conversation with my LinkedIn account manager last week, and I need to get the wording of this. We are actually, and I could say this because I'm obviously going to be biased, mate. So we are the fastest privately owned, and I've got to get that privately owned part, fastest privately owned recruitment agency in Australia as it stands now. And that's on a number of avenues that we're looking at, obviously engagement, likes, followers, obviously number of employees, retention. So for me personally, like LinkedIn has been an absolute game changer in all of my businesses. The Kona & Co brand, I started that during COVID, mate. And we grew that to a really successful exec search, insurance, and banking and finance. The Preston James brand, which is a rec-to-rec brand. The 420 Consulting, Ingenia Resources, which is over in the UK, which started off as Design and Construct Limited. So all these businesses, and we talked about Taylor or Talent Co. obviously earlier as well. All these businesses have all really come from an idea of, I guess, a frustration of wanting to do something different and do something better. But I think that's probably what is our biggest competitive advantage under the Collar brand now, is actually having all that knowledge and experience, all those wins, losses, and all those kind of antidotes to obviously share.
All right, so I'm trying to get my head around, because there's a lot. So let me dissect what you've just said. I don't know if anyone's listening feeling like me. I'm like, wow, that was a lot of information about different companies and growth numbers. And let me break that down. So you left your first job after how long? 2.5 years, did you say?
Did commission only for 2 years, and then set up a company called Design and Construct.
Right, so let's stop there. So you became a founder of your own recruitment company, Design and Construct, at the age of what, 26, 27?
26, yeah.
And you had that company for 17 years.
Yep.
And that company was just one brand, and you grew that to how many people was it when you left?
So headcount of about 55, mate, with offices in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, and London.
Right. Doing construction, like blue collar
constructions, so property construction, engineering, architecture, mainly white collar, to be honest with you, mate. Right. I mean, we certainly had a blue collar component, but that white collar, all your perm fees, some exec search in there as well.
Okay. So let's just talk about that for a minute, because that alone is pretty impressive to build a business at that age. Did you exit that company, like sell it, or what was the end result?
So the end result was basically exit. So brought in a VC, so grew that business, brought in an internal investor while I was obviously building the Design and Construct brand. I also launched Preston James, which is a rec-to-rec. So I also launched 420 Consulting, which is a software and IT specialist, launched Design and Construct Limited. So the four of those businesses were all being run in conjunction, basically while I was scaling the Design and Construct brand. Brought in an investor to help me take the business to the next level. And that's when we went to market and hired individuals like, the Hayes' global biller. So lady called Leslie Delimy, she built $3.2 million gross profit in the last financial year at Hayes. Brought her into the Design and Construct business, but we rebranded the business with the new investor to BCA, which is now Evolve Talent. And Leslie came in, and that's where the blue collar component came. So she was responsible for managing up to about 450 people. So we really took the Design and Construct business, from doing double digits to doing over 60 million turnover inside 18 months, with the help of obviously the VC, obviously the new hires that we're bringing in, and the further expansion.
What was the driver to keep building different brands? Like, if you're going in one direction with Design and Construct and it's going well, why are you opening a rec-to-rec and an IT recruiter? Like, what was the driver for that?
And the the method to the madness there, mate, was the individuals that I was actually partnering with. I mean, arguably, some of the best recruiters that I've been fortunate enough to partner with. I guess it was a different stage of my life there, where it was all about obviously growing, growing multiple brands. I didn't really see at that time, I didn't really see the benefit of obviously having it all under one roof, nor did I think it was possible. Because you look at the likes of the Hazeys and the Chandlers and the Robert Walters of the world, and they're obviously ASX listed. They've obviously got shareholders. They've got a lot of capital behind them. And I didn't really think the industry was actually ready for a business to actually combine all that talent, all that knowledge, and all that experience under one brand. And to be honest with you, I haven't really seen a business do it that well in Australia. So that's where the method to the madness was have specialist agencies who only specialize in what they say. I
Yeah.
guess they
But they
do
were all
exactly what it
centrally,
says.
were they all supported centrally by central services, finance, HR,
Yeah,
people?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what you said your life was different then. So was that living in Sydney and not being a father and stuff like you just talk us through what was your
Yeah,
lifestyle like?
100%. Well, the lifestyle was, mate, I'm a bit of a workaholic. There's no ifs or buts. And I think for me, it was like you say, the madness there was that I was working I'm going to say 9 to 5, but it was a 6 a.m. through to 6 p.m. on a Sydney kind of roster. But then jumping in back over to WA time, jumping into the UK time. So I was working like an absolute lunatic, mate. And for me personally, there had to be more to life, right? So, like I said to you earlier, and obviously recently, I'm proud father. Obviously, baby boy's just turned 9 months, and always wanted to have children in my life. And for me now, I've got that reason why. Whereas before, it was just I'm building these businesses, building these brands with no real exit strategy, obviously behind it, other than we're getting some really good momentum, really good traction. The brands are being really well recognized in their market sector and in their space, and that's ultimately, I guess, what the driver was. There was working with high performing recruiters who, let's be honest, wouldn't have actually come in under the design and construct brand because it's design and construct, right? So it's how do we then basically generate or create a brand, which I guess is where we're here today.
So what year did you sell that group of businesses?
Yeah, so exited those businesses about what we on 2000. So 2019 is when I actually exited. Although I was a shareholder up until July 2020, basically for the Evolve Talent brand, or basically the BCA brand. And then from there, that's when I launched the Kona and Co brand. So Kona and Co, again, mate, like I say, I'm a bit of a workaholic. So exited those businesses. I was going to take 12 months off. Myself and my wife basically, were laying on a beach in Hawaii at my father-in-law's. And as it happened, we were staying at a place called Kona. And, I was kind of racking my head what I'm going to do 5 weeks into this 12 months, obviously sabbatical that I was
Life-changing amount
taking.
of money though? Was it enough to retire or?
Well, it was certainly enough to, obviously set me up, mate. I mean, again, obviously having the business for 17 and a half years financially, obviously, I had a very good wicket. Again, one shareholder, one director. For me personally, it was, again, at that time, obviously, I was in a different marriage. I was with the same partner for 15 years. And obviously, children was supposed to be on the cards, and it came that it wasn't going to be on the cards.
Right.
And then from there, obviously, we went through a divorce.
Yeah.
So, part of the reason, obviously, why I brought in VC was exactly that reason. Obviously, to obviously help out from a financial point of view, and obviously to make sure that my other half was obviously financially taken care of, and I would obviously manage the businesses or keep the businesses. And then from there, obviously now happily remarried, and obviously happily, as I say, obviously. Happy to obviously have the little fella in our lives, but that is definitely what has been the game changer for me. Is the old saying goes, you can't put a price on happiness, right? So you could just go back to your question earlier, working like a lunatic all those hours, but if you're not happy in yourself, and your quality of work-life balance is critical, and that's all I seem to champion at the moment. Is obviously what is a good quality of work life, and at that time it was all work and there was no real life, if I'm honest. So to have the opportunity again, being over in Hawaii, then obviously the Kona and Co. on the basically in Kona,
So
Kona and Co. was
slow
established.
that down. Let's dissect that. So you sell the first business. Are you divorced at this point?
No, so sorry, divorced prior to me basically
Yeah.
exiting those businesses. Yep.
Yeah. So you've got that whole financial settlement to deal with there, but
Yep.
you're still obviously you're financially in a good position. Are you already with your now wife at this point, and you go to Hawaii together? Is that what? Or were you in Hawaii on your own?
Okay, so 2019 was obviously when I exited the businesses. 2018 was when I actually got divorced.
Yeah.
And then 2017 when I got divorced. 2019 was when basically I exited the business and when it was with my new partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then basically, yeah, we recently got married a couple of years ago.
Great. I mean, it sounds quite similar to me, right? I got married in 2019, got split up in 2020, divorced in 21, and married again in 22. So
I saw the pictures, mate. Congratulations.
I'm not a marriage obsessed lunatic. I promise. It's just the way life worked out, and it's quite similar. It's probably not too dissimilar a story to yours, but so you sat there in Hawaii 5 weeks in. This is a bit I'm excited. So you sound like you're probably quite itchy at this point. Like you've got like ants in your pants. I mean, you should be in theory enjoying the fact the world is is your oyster. You don't have to work. You've got this beautiful woman you're with. Could you a lot of people would say, "Oh, just enjoy the moment," but you're already starting to think about your next business.
Yeah, I think for me, mate, it's the drive, right? It's the reason why do I get up in the morning? And
Yeah,
bear in mind at that time I didn't have my baby boy, right?
yeah,
So it was still I was in my in my early 40s and still wanting to make a difference, but I I don't think I managed to achieve what I'd set out to achieve with the design and construct and with the other brands. I'll be completely honest. Like I think for me, my calling has always been leading to where I am today. Um, it's again that drive that there was something there was an underlining underlining kind of question that still needed answering as to about recruitment and like I needed something to prove to myself, to be honest with you, as if the other businesses weren't just a fluke, and that obviously I could I'm being honest, that they weren't a fluke and I could do it again, but not just do it again, do it better from a quality of work life balance. And I think
yeah. I don't
um,
think there's a 17-year fluke out there, just so you know. I don't think that exists. I think,
Yeah, yeah,
I think,
yeah.
I
No,
think
look, I hear you, mate. But I think for me, bringing in the investor, look, it had its great points, but it also had its really shitty points. And its
mm,
really shitty points were having my heart of the business, and I say my heart of the business because that's what it felt like, ripped out purely because you've got a bunch of accountants coming in who don't really appreciate the structure, the culture of the business, what you've built, um, and that kind of legacy that you're leaving in regards to as of today, mate, I've got north of 20 employees in the collar business who've all worked for me before. Some
right.
in 4 businesses, some in 3, some in 2, some in 1. And I think that's what is, again, one of our biggest competitive advantages is we all know what we set out to do at DNC. And for whatever reason, we didn't actually achieve that, or we don't believe we achieved that as a kind of as a group.
Right.
Whereas now the opportunity that is in front of us with collar is just immense.
So we'll get on to collar in a minute because I don't want to miss it. There's a lot to talk about. But so then you come back from Hawaii and you start a company called Kona and Co, which is what? What type of company is that?
So exec search.
Yeah.
So initially it was going to be looking into rec to rec, actually, funnily enough. And that was just down to do with a couple of the, I guess, sale agreements that had obviously when exiting the businesses. But we managed to obviously to resolve that. We then went into property construction, then went into banking finance, then went into software and IT, and then also into insurance as well.
And that was all exec search.
Exec search, white collar, all all white collar, decent size fees. All 6-figure salaries, predominantly were most of the roles that we're working on.
And were you
And that
personally recruiting at that point, or were you
I
always
was, mate.
leading?
Yeah, yeah. Back on the tools, and obviously recruiting from the front. And again, we grew that to a team of there was about 10 people involved in the business. From a standing start. None of us, I think there was only, sorry, I say none of us, about 3 of us had actually only spent about 2 weeks in the office together before COVID kind of reared its head.
Yeah.
A couple of the people had previously worked for me in the business as well. So again, that was obviously, what was a no-brainer for me. So again, the accounting, the insurance, having the opportunity to work with arguably one of the best recruiters that I've had the pleasure of working alongside, and he's now obviously still continuing with the Kona and Co brand under Kona Recruitment, and he's absolutely smashing goals. So again, I've been very fortunate throughout my career to work with high performing individuals who have either approached me direct and said, "Hey, do you want to do something together?" Or, "Hey, do you have an opportunity where you might be interested in basically, partnering or maybe mentoring, looking at it from whether it's an investment opportunity or purely just from a knowledge based point of view."
So what about the company that we spoke to you last? You said you were working with a year ago. So you're at Kona and Co. You've got Kona and Co. And then you also launched another brand.
Yeah. So the high performing recruiter, obviously, that was talking about from Hayes. So $3.2 million gross
Mm.
profit at Hayes. Once I exited the business, was very unhappy with the investors that were on the table, the new management that came in, and in essence wanted to get out. So we actually went into business together. I was the second largest shareholder in Tailored, or Talent Co, as they're now basically rebranded to. That was I guess, the high volume blue collar
Yeah.
business. I was managing that from afar from Melbourne during COVID. So bear in mind, while I was in, people give me grief about my hair, mate. I haven't had this haircut since I was actually in Melbourne during the lockdown. I couldn't get a haircut. So last time I had this cut was about 2.5 years ago. Get the back and sides cut, but was managing tailored resources from afar from Melbourne. 6 months in, Kona and Co was really started to take some traction. I really then was at a crossroad. Do I continue doing what I'm doing and really fall back into where I was at Design and Construct, managing multiple businesses, working ridiculous hours, working East Coast, West Coast? Or do I arrange and actually approach the team at Kona and Co? Do you want to do a management buyout? They did a management buyout. They retained basically all the intellectual property. Myself and my wife at the time, bear in mind, we'd just been in a 5-month lockdown in Melbourne.
Yeah.
We had a restriction 5 kilometers from our house, only one person allowed out the household at any one time. Should we relocate over to WA? Better lifestyle. COVID isn't really present in the WA, and they obviously managed to kind of sail past that really well. And so made the decision, management buyout, Kona and Co, step into Tailored as as a full time, basically, with no other distractions, just focusing on this business. Managed to do a $10 million turnover business inside our first 12 months of trading. So 6 months over in Melbourne, 6 months, 5 months on the ground over here. But that's when myself and my wife obviously found out we're expecting. And so on the Tuesday, found out we're expecting. Wednesday, I've called the board meeting, politely resigned, gave back my equity, and wished them all the best. And then Thursday, literally launched Collar. And
Right. Let's dissect that. Right. So you moved to WA because the weather's better and it's on the beach and all the rest. I mean, I've lived in Melbourne and I know what it's like. It's a beautiful place, but it's not your classic warm beachside city. I mean, they've got all that, but it's not. No, it's more of a cultural. It's almost a bit European, isn't it? And then you got Sydney, and you got. I've never been to Perth, but I know people who live there, and I know it's warmer all year round, etc. So you make the decision from a family perspective to relocate. You get pregnant, and it takes that decision or that news to make you walk away from a 10 million turnover business that you're your second major shareholder. Why?
For me, like I said, I think I had some unfinished business with the Design and Construct, where I believe I could have probably taken that a lot larger than what I did. Being on the ground over here, mate, all I've wanted my whole life, you ask any of my friends, any of my associates, any of my peers, I've always wanted to be a father. Right? My dad died when I was 13. And so growing up my whole life, obviously, without a real father figure. And looking back at some of my wins in my career, just wish I had somebody there to be able to share that with. And as soon as I found out where I was expecting, mate, it was like it is for everyone, no doubt, the happiest day of my life. But I went into the office that day or the morning after, and I was just kind of looking around going, do you know what? I could keep doing what I'm doing here, and it's going to be cruisy. It's going to be relaxed. Yes, there's obviously, there's a bit of an internal power struggle and all that. There was three directors in the business, or sorry, three shareholders in the business, Leslie being the majority, myself being the second, and then another shareholder. And for me, I was like, do you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to put all my time and effort into something again. I want it to be 100% mine. And that's where, so my wife had no idea I was resigning. Right. So literally that Wednesday afternoon, I'm driving home. As I'm driving home, it takes me about 40 minutes from the office back home. I was on the phone to Job Adder. I set up my Job Adder account. Previously, obviously, I had a trading ABN that was still obviously active. Guys, this is what I'm thinking of
What was
doing.
wrong
Can you
with?
set me up on
Sorry
Job
to
Adder? They
interrupt.
did it pretty much instantaneous.
So what was wrong with the business that was turning over 10 million that you were the major shareholder? Like, why wasn't that going to be the next collar? Why do you need to set up a second company to
I
achieve
was
it?
because I wasn't the major. I was the second largest shareholder in the business.
Right.
But ultimately, there was 3 decision makers in that business, right? So for me, having again run all these other businesses in conjunction, I just felt that the opportunity for me and for my family
Right.
was by backing myself and going out and doing it all again. I also believe that learning curve, being on the ground over here in Perth for those 5 months, I reckon I learned more about the recruitment mobilization piece, the speed to market, the high volume accounts that I'd done in 20 years in recruitment. So I was actually really invigorated by being on the ground over here in Perth, and actually saw it as an awesome opportunity that, yes, we did 10 million in our first 12 months. And this is going to sound a little bit arrogant. I'm not arrogant in any shape, way, or form, but the reality was, mate, we could have done 20 million had we have implemented some of the changes, some of the systems, some of the processes that I was looking at doing. So rather than kind of continue to, you know, have red tape to get through from a decision making point of view, it's why are you making this a lot harder than what it needs to be? Like recruitment's a people, it's a people business.
Mm.
You know, the hiring, for example, in that business, we went through over 40 consultants inside the 6 months when I was over on the East Coast. You know, so when I came over here, I thought, well, maybe it's just a management issue. And again, we could talk about that at another stage. But there's a number of reasons why I decided. But for me personally, it was that you know, the opportunity to become a father and to really leave a legacy is something that I've never been more passionate about, and something that, you know, again, like I said, there was as if I needed to prove to myself what I was capable of doing. And you know, I'm dyslexic, and I don't know whether that's got a big part in the drive behind me. But I'm very much a perfectionist when it comes to recruitment methodology, the branding, and I saw this as an awesome opportunity. And again, during COVID, the conversations, some of the accounts that I brought in this previous business were arguably some of the largest accounts in the industry, and I'd gone out there business development, brought them in myself. So I think there was that niggle again going, hold on a minute, like this is working, but do you think you could do it better? And quite frankly, I did think I could do it better. And that was what was a big driver behind it all.
Exciting. I love it. I mean, it's. I've never met anyone, I don't think, who's done as much in that period of time in so many different businesses, and you know, you talk about it so level-headedly. Like we could literally have an episode on every single brand you've spoken about, right? But what I really want to get into is the collar brand. So we've done half the episode on the history, and then we're at collar, right? So you found out you're pregnant, you hand in your notice, you can set up job adder on the journey back. You don't waste any time, do you? So you're what happens next?
So I guess the first 2 months of the business was okay. Let's, and again, bear in mind, I've scaled the Kona and Co brand, scaled the Tail of Resources brand, which were all done really on LinkedIn. That's how we
Yeah,
managed to penetrate the market and get the brands out
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Being a big LinkedIn advocate, and again, like this, I don't understand why more businesses aren't utilizing, which is arguably the best business
It's
development
bonkers, isn't it?
platform in
Trust
recruitment.
me, Ephraim,
It's it's
it's
it's
my life. My life
it's
conversation.
insane.
My life's conversation right now. Like the amount of
Yeah.
people, saying to me, "Yeah, we know we need to do it. We need to invest in it, but you know, we need to sell first." And I'm like, you why are you separating the two things? Like LinkedIn is your sales engine for most businesses I talk to. Like you spend more money on it than human capital. You know, you find all your candidates and clients on there. It's only going to get more competitive on there. Like you've got to go now. And they're like, well, let's just sell and then we'll pick it up in a bit. And I'm like, oh, unbelievable. But anyway, that's the world. So go back. Sorry to interrupt you, but go back to where you were.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right, mate. So that's what the initial strategy was, right? So first 2 months, systems, process, procedures. My first hire that I made in the business was my graphic designer, who's now our design director.
Mm.
So for me, I'd already done quite a bit of research in regards to these large volume accounts, large volume recruitment. worked and who was doing it well. And it always stemmed back to the Chandler McLeods, the Hazes of the world. Okay, so what makes them so great? How do they do things so well? And obviously, yes, it's the level and knowledge of experience of the recruiters that they hire and train, and arguably the best training platform or best training of recruitment. Um, um, for me personally, Hayes is arguably the best recruitment firm, and most of the successful leaders in my spaces or the industries that I've recruited for have all come from Hayes. So, really doing some analysis, doing some research, what makes these businesses so great. And that was really what the first 2 months were: getting the brand out there, and, getting the marketing right, and starting to identify key players in the industry that I wanted to bring
So
into the
what
business.
were you said blue collar. This was blue collar. So this was different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what exact roles and type of organizations was the plan to work with?
So I guess my first clients that I actually signed, which were on retainers. Now they obviously the recruitment industry very well in the UK, mate. Obviously in Australia, blue collar retain work is pretty much non-existent. So what I was doing, I was putting a white collar spin on a large volume blue collar market. I was going out speaking to these clients and listening to what their pain points are. And their pain points are, well, we're not the best payers in the industry. The recruiters don't seem to be delivering any good candidates to us. And the majority of the reasons behind that were, well, what are the margins? What are the charge rates? What are the pay rates? What are the payment terms? What level of exclusivity are you giving to your recruiters to actually make it commercially viable for them to invest money into building a team around your business? So very much an exec search, white collar, again, kind of all brought
Right.
together. Um,
When we say blue
and
collar, what are we talking? Like
Oh,
logistics, warehouse, drivers?
electricians, carpenters,
Right,
chefs, cooks,
right.
cleaners, and that's really what's enabled us to again have that point of difference where a lot of the larger organisations in Australia have taken it for granted that they've got these accounts and these accounts aren't going anywhere, and through no fault of their own, COVID has obviously come around. Um, Candidates have been, or the employees have been overpromised and maybe mistreated during COVID, and whether that's working from home restriction or not working from home, you have to be in the office. Everyone's kind of panic stations. What's going to happen? Is there going to be a recession? So I've really seen that as an opportune timing to go in there and actually headhunt. So as a business, I think we're up to not even 10% of our team have come through Rec Direct, mate. The majority of them will come directly to us, or have come through referrals, or somebody in the business has recommended somebody into the
So
business.
you go in out. You personally start the business. Do you have you took any investment externally, or is it all your own cash to set this up?
Yeah. To date, all everything is from myself.
What sort of capital did you have behind, or did you need to get this off the ground? Because you must have hired so fast where you were not making any money for a while.
100%, mate. I
Mm.
mean, for me, again, being in that blue collar space or large volume space, there's so many options out there. So, whether that's banks, whether that's VC, whether that's invoice financing or basically a finance partner. So I'd work very closely with the A Positive guys, and Danny Marlowe and Darren Cottrell. A Positive have been incredible. I've basically launched multiple businesses, all with that invoice factoring service basically provided by A Positive. So again, they were one of the first phone calls that I made.
Yep.
And we got that basically set up straight away. What that allowed me to do was really then compete with the larger organizations. The organizations that could really carry 90-day payment terms through the factoring facility or through the finance facility. And that already gave us a huge competitive advantage when, we're going in to see clients and literally the first conversations are, oh, you do know our payment terms are X, Y, Z. It's like, yeah, payment terms aren't an issue. We need to talk about basically the volume. We need to talk about the exclusivity. We need to talk about your pay rates, ultimately what our margins are going to be, because it needs to be commercially viable for everyone involved. Then in conjunction, obviously, with a lot of the retain work that was coming through.
How do you even get into those conversations when you've got a business that's a couple of months old, no collar track record?
Mm.
Like you're going up against Chandler McLeods and Robert Walters and Hayes and Randstad and these brands that are, they've been in the part of the furniture in Australia for a long time. How do you get in the room? Is it based on your experience through your previous? Like, did you know a lot of these people already?
I believe so, mate. Yeah. Look, and again, this is all fairly new to me. I'm back on the tools. I'm out there business developing. Speaking to key decision makers in businesses, and maybe they're giving me an opportunity to have a sit down and have a coffee and have a chat with them based on my background, based on the previous track record. There's a number of accounts that I'm working with now that I've actually recruited for over 20 years. But initially, when Collar first launched, I was going after some of the biggest blue chip names in the industry, because I was going to them with a solution and I was actually getting wins. And again, LinkedIn had a huge part to play in
Hmm.
that, mate. LinkedIn allowed me to tell my story in conjunction with Emma, the brand, the brand guru behind the business. She's able to bring my ideas to life. And when I'm speaking to these organizations about what their pain points are, well, let's address that now and actually do be solutions focused. Cliche, I know, and everyone's screaming that from the top of the hills, but we were able to really go in there and go, well, why do you think your current providers aren't supplying? Why is your panel basically not fulfilling most of these requirements? And the majority of the time, it was, well, because they've probably got other suppliers that are paying them a higher margin or better payment terms. Or so I saw that as a real opportunity to actually kind of educate them in regards to how we operate as a business. And I remember going to see one of my first clients, mate. I won't name who they are, but so arguably one of the largest mining contractors in Australia. And I managed to get a seat at the table over this meeting, and we're talking about how we're going to join the panel. And then they said, "So, Ephraim, how many contractors do you have out at the moment?" And I was literally 2 weeks into starting invoice. I think we had 10 contractors out. And I went, well, you do know we've got over 400 people out at the moment through labour hire. I was like, yeah, exactly. That's exactly the type of account that I'm looking for. Now, I appreciate it's, you've got to trial and error, and obviously we've got to prove to you what we're capable of doing. But that's what has been our success, is the actual delivering on what we say we're going to do, not just
Yeah.
giving it lip service, actually backing it up, and making the placements. But it's that follow up as well. It's that candidate care. It's like you said, there's no one solution to this problem. You've got to address it from multiple avenues, and that's what we've been doing.
I'm interrupting today's episode to bring you a message from our sponsor, Vincere. Vincere are the all-in-one recruitment platform for the most innovative recruitment agencies on the planet. And they've put together a free CRM buyer's guide for you to read, because so many recruitment leaders are looking to upgrade CRMs, but before you sign the contract, be sure to read the terms at least twice. There's so many common traps that you need to watch out for. So not understanding the pricing model is one that always comes up. Discounts limited to only the first year of a contract length is something that companies will throw. What are monthly contracts all about? Could this mean flexibility for the vendor to raise the price in the future? And how is your data hosted? Where is it? Is it anything outside your country? And could it mean compliance and legal issues for you down the line? So you will see the web address to get that right next to this episode. Wherever you're watching this episode, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's Apple, Spotify, YouTube, just look below. You'll see the link, click the link and get that free guide. You will not regret learning all of these hacks before making your decision and locking yourself into a new contract with a new supplier. So take us on like a logical, chronological order of events. So you start the business in the summer. You say you spent 2 months on systems and processes. So that is like just make sure everything's connected. You understand every part of your business theoretically before you go into practice. You get your finance set up, your compliance set up, your CRM set up. Everything's there, ready to just run. Then what was it when it comes to then September time, August, September time, when you're starting to go out and generate revenue to invoice in October? How many people are in the business at that point?
There was 3. So first hire was my graphic designer. Second hire was my previous business partner's executive assistant. And so it was a bit of a Jerry Maguire moment once I exited the business. She then basically put her hand up and said, look, I'd love to come with you. So it was myself and Rachel initially. And from there, just before Christmas, we got up to a team of about 6. And then that's where the growth was obviously all happened really from January of this year.
So did you win a few accounts in the back end of last year that obviously provided that stability that enabled you to go on? And
100%, yeah. So and again, that was obviously very much white collar revenue coming in, but into a relatively easy blue collar market to fill. So to give you an idea, going into companies that were looking for truck drivers, so MC truck drivers. So, the iron ore comes out the ground. Well, rail infrastructure is pretty much non-existent in Australia. So how do they get that iron ore to the ports to then ship? Well, it's all done by road train. So road train being, quads, basically, semi-trailers, all have MC drivers. So this one company in particular was struggling to find MC drivers, just picked up a huge contract. I'd got in a position that would find you 10 basically MC drivers, but I want a payment up front. And then from there, we did that at a discounted rate, which was still commercially viable and actually a decent rate for a blue collar, basically permanent position. We then got the first 10 filled, and we actually filled them all within 2 weeks. They then retained us again. And then from there, that kind of got out to industry. Well, as long as there's large volume there, and yes, obviously there's a price to pay and it's a retained model, but we were delivering and we were getting, number of client feedbacks, then remarketing that feedback. So, clients, for example, a client called us up and they would be the largest facilities management company globally. They reached out to us on through our website, but based on activity we'd been doing on LinkedIn, and said, "Hey, we've got 180 positions for you to get stuck into. Would you be interested in coming in and actually recruiting for us?" We had a call with them. They said, "How many do you have available at the moment?" And I think we had about 11 people who were suitable to fill these roles. In the space of 4 working days, so by close of business on that Friday, we'd mobilized 83 people to their site. Now that's bear in mind we had a relatively small team back then as well. So it's knowing which battles to pick, and again knowing your worth in the industry, not underpricing. We're certainly not the cheapest in the industry. We're certainly not the most expensive in the industry, but it's all about the level of knowledge and experience. So again, one of my first hires, and she's just celebrated her first 12 months with the business today. She was Hazy's top 3 billers nationally. And for somebody like Carly to leave a very stable and very secure job at Hayes to come into our business, which is obviously a startup, is a bit risky for her. But she's now sitting in an associate director role, and she's doing an incredible job. She's got one of the largest teams in our business underneath her. She's now managing some of the largest accounts in Australia. Um, that's that's been our strategy. Is we identify who the key players are. We offer them a solution, which again, our commission structure would be unheard of. We offer 10% of all gross profit, basically generated, which is paid on a monthly basis. And we go and we target high performing recruiters. If you've got $1 million biller in your business, you're going to do to keep the lights on and ultimately, obviously, keep the operating expenses running. We've got double digits $1 million billers in our business now, and again, they've all come from some of these large nationals, multinationals, internationals, which all they need to do. Obviously, they're going to have a restraint, and obviously, we're very mindful of everyone's restraint. We would never expect anyone to bring any business into our organization because we've actually got most of the accounts there. So for us, it's offering them come and work in a business that's going to look after you financially. Mental health is something that we're really big on. So free EAP systems, so employee assistance program, basically for the whole entire casual workforce. Now we all know if somebody's affected with mental health, it's not just the individual, it'll be their household. So we offer that. We're the only recruitment agency in Australia who offers free EAP to casuals and also to their entire household as well. So we get that employee engagement strategy right. We get that well-being right. Investors in people. Obviously, we just won 2 gold accreditations for investors in people. One for we invest in our people, one for our well-being of our people. We're also accredited as a great place to work inside the last 12 months. Obviously, we've got our ISO accreditation. So the reason why I'm sharing all this with you, mate, because that speaks volumes to our internal employees. And if we get that internal employee engagement right and that retention right, then they're going to be the ones doing the marketing for us and have all these, I guess, individuals reach out to us directly wanting to come along and work in the collar business. The 3 p.m. finish on a Friday, again, it's a no-brainer. Like most people in most recruitment businesses I've ever been a part of, come 12 o'clock on a Friday, they're already checked out. Right? They're checked out for the weekend. Yeah, so it's the 3 p.m. finish. It's something. Yes, there's a cost to the business, but the impact that has and obviously the return on that for us as an organisation is huge. The extended annual leave, so we were just talking about it yesterday. So we actually closed down. Obviously, you've got the public holidays anyway, but the week in between, from Christmas Eve to the first working day in January, is additional annual leave given off by the business. So that's on top of the 20 days annual leave. Historically, what is frowned upon in any business if people take their sick leave. Well, in Australia, it's contracted that you're entitled to 10 days sick leave every single year. But I don't know of a business that obviously encourages people to take those 10 days sick leave. So for us, we do, and we call them mental health days, and you can take that on top of your annual leave. So you're already clocking up. You get your birthday off as well. You're already clocking up, north of 6 weeks worth of annual leave by doing exactly the same job, but for a different business and a different brand. Being privately owned, we don't have all that red tape to get through. Somebody comes up with an idea, a suggestion in our business. If it's commercially viable and it makes sense and it's good business sense, then
You'll do it.
let's just implement it.
So let's go back
Again, no brainer.
Let's go back a bit. But let's go back to this time last year. So you're going into Christmas. You said you had about 6 people back end of last year. Yeah. You were obviously very much on the tools. You're driving. Are you finding candidates as well? Like you're doing that. You finding MP drivers and stuff. Are you doing that bit, or have you got other people doing that?
No, mate. So October, I don't mind sharing this with you. October, I actually had my personal best in recruitment. So I billed $134,000 in perm revenue in the month of October. And again, bear in mind that was our first month that we started billing. So it all comes back to me wanting to back myself, and again feeling like I had something to prove. And I don't think I'll ever lose that kind of drive. And even today, I still business development. I still love making a placement as much as the next person in this business. There's nothing in collar that I would ever ask anyone to do that I'm not willing to do myself. And I think that's what's so refreshing and why so many people have brought into what we're doing as an organization, because they all feel and share the responsibility of making Collar the business that it is today. No one person is bigger than this business, not even myself. And I've said that time and time again. But without the team I've got around me, we just wouldn't been able to achieve the numbers that not only are we doing today, but where we're projected to go over the next 12, 24, and 36 months, which is incredible. I mean, the numbers we're going to be doing over the next 12.
Sorry, mate. There was a bit of a delay on the sound, so I think you're picking me up a bit, about 10 seconds after I'm saying something. But what sort of talk me through the team? Talk me through the team and the foundations you had to lay early to be able to scale, because you can't get to 100 people in a year if you're the man who's doing 100 grand a month. Like if that's all you're doing, you're billing. You need to have a team around you, right, that can ensure that the business has all the relevant touch points and training points and support points to scale. I like obviously looking at the things that the guys at Levin have done. They've got this like unique team structure of pure support people that walk the floor all day. And so they can take 30, 40 graduates every couple of weeks or every couple of months and bring them into the company and get them up and running. It's bonkers how they've done it. How are you going from 0 or 6 to 100 people in 12 months? What's the support layer these people are getting to get up and running as fast as possible?
Sorry, Matt. I missed all that. It just kept breaking up. Lost you, mate.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. You're back again.
I think it's got to be your end, because my end, I mean, I record this every week. I never have any issues, so it must be your end of the internet. But I'm asking about the support layer for you to go from 6 to 100 people. How do you do that? What people do you need in your business to support that growth? What's the team structure, and what are the non-billing components, etc., to ensure that people can come in and grow fast?
So the first senior hires that I made in the business were my director of health and safety and my director of well-being, as in company well-being. Now, Krilos and Amanda had actually worked side by side at Hayes, basically for over 7 years. So Amanda was at Hayes for 10 years, and Krilos was at Hayes for 7 years. Now, arguably the two most experienced people in large volume mobilization recruitment businesses in Australia, never mind in WA. So both of them were absolutely risky moves for both of them to leave, a very stable job like Hayes and come into a startup. But set the foundations for us, that the message we were sending to market to all of our clients being that health and safety of our employees is our number one priority, has really set the benchmark for us to be able to go after some of these larger volume accounts. So the directors of, so our first hire, basically director of it in industry, was director of facilities management, and that was Abigail Ryan, who's arguably been one of the best hires we made as a business. So Abby started with our FM, or started as our director of facilities management back in January, and has now grown that business to a multi-million-dollar basically revenue stream across Australia. And Abigail's recently been promoted into an executive director role, and also given equity in the whole business, as a
Right.
thank you for all the hard work and everything that she's done in scaling that. On the back end of Abby coming on board, we then basically hired our directors of. And so directors of, meaning they're responsible for running their own states. We have a director of WA, Rachel Jones. Rachel is again an absolutely incredible hire. She was at Chandler McLeod for 7 or 8 years. Again, had a job for life. No real reason for her to leave, other than she wanted to be part of something bigger, better, and obviously greater. And actually be able to see and kind of be responsible for her own success. James, who was our director of New South Wales, well, James previously worked for me before in design and construct, started with me as a principal recruitment consultant, made it up to state manager in 3 years. He then went on to one of our competitors, and was their director of for about 2 years. And then obviously once he realized I was opening up in Sydney, reached out to me, and basically, again, no brainer. James has single-handedly grown his team now to over 18 inside 3 months. And a team has followed him across. Obviously from where he was previously working. Our director of Victoria, Peter, has only worked for two agencies his whole career. He's spent 18 years at Hayes and left Hayes to come and actually join Collar. So he's our director of Victoria. And again, having those key and instrumental hires with that knowledge and that experience coming into our business has absolutely created that ripple effect in the industry, where people are actually stopping and taking note of who we are and what we're about. And has opened up the floodgates for recruiters wanting to reach out to us directly, and be part of this journey, be part of this success. So to answer your question, that those hires have been what has allowed us to scale, because they're the ones that are responsible for their day to day, and basically in regards to day to day management, training. Our national learning training development director, Kerry, Kerry's worked for me in four of my other previous businesses, and again knows how I operate, knows how I work, and from a systems, processes, compliance point of view, she's the one who's kind of championing everyone, the induction, the onboarding, to make sure we're all singing from the same hymn sheet.
And so there's a lot of experienced talent at the top. Are you then going after experienced hires throughout the whole company, or have you got a graduate training model? What's the way you're doing it?
Yeah, mate, I've got to hold my hand up. That's probably where we have got it wrong. Is the least experienced recruiters coming through, and that's probably where our biggest turnover has been. Is recruiters with less than 6 months experience. And I think because of the nature of the beast that is Collar, and the size of the accounts that we've got, unfortunately, a lot of these, obviously, accounts really need to have that knowledge and that experience to really understand and appreciate just, how much risk is involved, the safety, the compliance, the mobilization, and the account managers. So the business is very much set up as an account management model. We go out, we win the accounts, we bring the accounts in, we go to market, identify who's key players who've had exposure to those types of accounts previously, and actually bring them in either as as an account manager, or as a recruitment mobilization person under those accounts. But again, to have north of 400 years worth of recruitment knowledge and experience under the collar business, it's all about hiring experienced recruiters who understand, the complexities and the trials and tribulations of dealing with, some of these large volume businesses that, we have KPIs that are given to us from these businesses, and we have to adhere to those. And unfortunately, sometimes training inexperienced recruiters is a little bit challenging to bring them up to speed with the level of expectation that is required for us, to maintain those relationships. Now, absolutely, we've looked back over, and that's why we've put Kerry into this learning, training, development role. Is we've got a learning management system, over 700 hours worth of recruitment training videos, own the intellectual property to the recruitment excellence guide, So, that's a 300-page recruitment training manual that basically we've put together that now everyone's been trained on. So it doesn't matter whether you're a junior all the way through to, director, you've got a dedicated career pathway and training course. So the training part of the business now is something we're invested heavily into. We've got a new training system that's going to be going live that the whole business is now involved in, their input, their guidance. And again, the old saying goes, we're only as good as our last placement. So we want to make sure that, we're doing more to upskill and train some of the more junior people that are coming into the business and make sure they're not being left behind by the more experienced individuals that are literally coming in and hitting the ground running from day one. Look, we had somebody start with us last week, mate, and on her second day made her first placement. We've got people coming into the business that have been working for the same organizations for a number of years and considered to be a high performer in their businesses that are coming in, breaking the personal best inside the first month, 2 months,
Why is
3 months. We've got people that are having, well, mate, I'd like to say I know the answer, mate. Other than the branding and marketing that we do, it's we're getting on average about 3 to 5 new client inquiries come through to our business on a weekly basis. And I think that again is one of our biggest competitive advantages. Where if you work for a larger organization, not only do you have a geographical restriction, so i.e., if that's outside of basically that geographical location, it has to get handed over to a different office. Oh, sorry, that position's got a certain salary bandwidth, so it needs to go to a different department. And because of the way the businesses are all set up, it actually makes it very challenging for somebody to be a true traditional 360 recruiter across multiple industries and multiple geographical restrictions or locations. For us, our favorite saying is, if they're not in the database, they're there for the taking. So everyone's earning opportunity in collar is already exponentially greater than what it would be working for one of these large nationals, multinationals, international firms, because they've already got their directors they've already got their associate directors, they've already got the team leads. For us, we're a brand new business. We're kind of putting the infrastructure in place to offer people those career development opportunities. So they can further enhance their skill set, their knowledge. Again, the commission structures that we offer for the first $500,000, anyone in the business, mate, they get 10%. Once they build $500,000, it jumps up to 15%. Once they build $1 million GP for the business, it jumps up to 20%. Once you're in that 20% bracket range with no threshold, you're literally in the top 5% of earning recruiters in the whole of Australia. Now, obviously, that only works for us as a business if we've got a team of high performing recruiters who are consistently achieving and exceeding basically their own PBs and their own targets. So it doesn't matter whether it takes you 12 months to build $500,000 or it takes you 24 months, you would still get that 10%. But as soon as you've hit that cap of 500,000, there's never any going back. You then go straight to the next tier, which is 15%. And again, like you could be on 15% until as long as it takes you to get to the $1 million mark. But having that kind of, treating everyone as an adult and giving their own autonomy to really grow business within the business is, I think, what's so exciting and what's being one of our biggest talent attraction models is people can see their earning potential. So I'll give you an idea, right? So at Design and Construct, say your average base salary was $80,000. So 3 times threshold, that's $240,000 a year. That's $20,000 a month they would all have to earn before they see any commission. Well, if you're on that threshold at the moment, by coming into Collar Talent Group, you're getting 10% of that $240,000 just by joining our business without actually having any target or without doing any more work. So you're already getting a $24,000 pay rise is the way I'm kind of seeing it, right? So when I'm educating people and speaking to people about the earning opportunity within this business, it's like no other business out there. Now, we're
I
obviously
mean,
getting to
no
the size
threshold.
now
Let's
where
say in the UK, a no threshold is pretty normal now. That's becoming pretty standard.
okay,
Like that is
we,
not.
mate,
Yeah, that.
speak to Pete Watson. He's obviously Mr.
Yeah,
Rec to Rec, obviously for Australia. He'd be able to give you a good indication. And from what I understand, mate, there isn't too many businesses offering that in Australia. So
really.
maybe we've kind of got in there. We got in there early, and that's what's obviously allowing us to
Hmm.
attract these types of individuals. But it's definitely a big motivator for all the conversations that I'm having. I mean, like, in the new year, we're launching software and IT. We're launching government. So the guy that we've got coming in heading our government up is arguably the number one recruiter in government in the whole of Australia. And again, like absolutely phenomenal, incredible recruiter who's would have had a job for life where he is, but at the same time, he's wanting to create his own legacy and leave something for his own, for generations to come himself. So I think people are really buying into that what we're building here, we're not building to exit. So I've got no intentions of exiting this business. And you asked earlier about investors, and absolutely, mate, we've got investors keen to come in. And I think that's what, is certainly reassuring for me as an entrepreneur, is to know that, we've got that opportunity to bring in the external investors should we need. I managed to pick up the CEO Magazine CEO Startup of the Year award, basically at the beginning of November in Sydney. And for me, that's probably the highlight of my career. That award is now sitting proudly in my little boy's, bedroom on his toy, basically on his bookshelf. And he's the reason why I do what I do every day. So to now have an opportunity to really kind of, go up against some of these larger global brands is what gets me out of bed every single day. But without losing sight of that work-life balance, mate. Like I'm no longer up at 4 o'clock every single day, and if I am up at 4 o'clock, I'm there with my boy for the first 3 hours. And then in the office, like I'm home by three o'clock every day to spend that next 3 hours with my little boy before he goes down. So I've now got my reason why, and my motivation behind why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think that just it then becomes part of the DNA of the business.
So let's
And yet I'm obviously going to be biased.
to round that up though. I just want to round up the business model so people understand it. You've got almost like you've got an RPO type model offsite where you sign. You've got a BD team who will sign clients, and then it moves to a delivery function who will then deliver scalable, retained, project-based solutions, right? And you're doing that in blue collar areas right now, but you're going to be moving into white collar areas with technology, government. You're going to the same model. Will it always be the same model, or are you going to do some contingent work? And
So it's not all retained. So that's how the business started off. So a lot of our work is actually contingency or panel based. But you've got to have the team there, and that's all speed to market. So, i.e., a client might put 100 vacancies out, and it's going to be first in best dress. But the way we've got the account set up, you've got an associate director who then has a team of account managers underneath them. Those account managers are all looking after one individual account. Underneath those account managers, there's a team of recruitment mobilization, which are one person doing a combined job. So they're recruiting, they're sourcing the candidates, they're getting them into the system, compliance mobilization, references, medicals, and then obviously that candidate care component to it. They work in conjunction with the account managers. So the account manager, so it's a volume based kind of business. Now, the white collar and exec search, and for me personally, this is where the excitement is really starting to happen because that's my forte, that's my background. White collar and exec search. So we've just launched exec search on the back end of obviously winning the CEO magazine. No better time for me to launch the exec search side of the business. The software and IT is obviously coming on board, as I say, in January, because I've previously had knowledge and experience, launching a successful software and IT business. The government side, well, we've already picked up a few government contracts recently, and that's a no-brainer. That's kind of the final piece of the puzzle for us, is to go off obviously a lot of these kind of ongoing federal, state, and local government. And then also the office locations, mate. Like we're literally the only recruitment agency in Perth which will actually now have 4 offices. So we've got 3 at the moment. There's a 4th
in
coming
Perth?
online basically in January in Perth, mate.
Why
So
do you need
and
4?
again, the method to
City. Why do you need 4?
great question. All right, so if you were to speak to somebody from Perth or any other major city, it's the travel location, right? It's the amount of time it takes them to travel to and from work. So for us, we've got an office based in the metro, so bank centre in the metro of the city. We've got one south of the river, which is an hour south. We've got an hour north of the river. So they say the river, which is the dividing part between the city. And then we've got one which is about to open up in Bunbury, which is about 3 hours south of Perth. So the method to the madness there is whenever I was interviewing recruiters, how far is the office? It's half an hour. Oh, it's too far. Well, what do you mean it's too far? Half an hour is, but in Perth, half an hour is too far. So I wanted to combat that issue that I was experiencing by hiring people, by having local offices. And by doing that, it's worked, and it's worked really, really well. So we're now replicating that in other businesses, in other states. So Queensland, for example, we've got Gold Coast, we've got Brisbane CBD. We're soon to have Mackay opening up. And again, not only is that to service our clientele, but also to make sure we're able to attract the best consultants.
What about Melbourne and Sydney?
Melbourne, Sydney. So Sydney, we're in Sydney CBD, and Melbourne again. So I've launched businesses from Sydney, and I've launched businesses from Melbourne. Melbourne, we're in Richmond, which is kind of
Yeah, I
just
know it, yeah.
outside the city fringe.
Yeah.
Yeah, great location, close to public transport, and that's where we'll be based. I would see, uh, well, forever, to be honest with you. Sydney, we're opening up basically. So we've got somebody starting with us on Thursday. Who's and this is the thing, mate. So the person who started with us on Thursday has actually just left a state management role for a national recruitment firm to come into our as an associate director, because not only is the money earning opportunity there, but the clarity and the no restraint in regards to geographical restrictions, that getting handed over here, that being shared there. We don't have any of that. As long as Collar's making the placement, we'll share the commission, we'll share the love internally, right? Because that's ultimately our number one goal. So Sydney, there'll be Sydney CBD, which is Circular Quay overlooking the harbour. There'll be a Parramatta office, which will be coming online as well, which is more western, southwest Sydney. And then we'll also have a Newcastle, which is kind of regional.
Yeah.
And again, it's not only to attract the recruiters, but also to service the clients, which that's what everyone's looking out for. The Bunbury location, just give you this as an antidote. So the Bunbury location, we had a client down in Bunbury who said they haven't had a recruiter drive down because it's 3 hours. No recruiter's driven down from Perth to see them in over 3 years. 3 years. They're one of the largest accounts that ourselves and a number of our competitors are servicing. So based on that conversation with that client, that's why we decided to go into Bunbury, because we want to have somebody on the ground down there who can be a true account manager, who can hopefully pick up the majority of their work. Now we've actually got somebody who can pop in and say good day and have a coffee with them. It's not rocket science, you know.
How
You've
do
got
you
to just
create a
listen to the
culture?
pains.
Because it's a bit like a remote business in a way, where you got that many offices in one country. Like, what? How are you going to make sure everyone's got
Yeah.
How do you make sure these offices are culturally similar? And because someone in Bunbury, I imagine, is very different to someone on Circular Quay in Sydney.
Perfect.
Like, it's a different world.
100%. And again, I think because, like I said, I've got over 20 people in the business who've previously worked for me before. So my whole operations team have all worked for me before. My COO was my 2IC Design and Construct Preston James 420. Right. My general manager was my AR basically manager. I stayed on with it. So that whole team over on the East Coast have all worked for me before in multiple businesses. Over here in the West Coast, well, again, I'm leading from the front. I've got basically the director of WA, who's a female version of me. Culture is king, and culture in this business is paramount. That's what makes us so great. So things like, you know, the Great Place to Work accreditation, the investors in people, we invest in our well-being, we invest in our people accreditation. That's our business being audited from the inside out. That's them asking questions to our internal staff. What makes this company so great? Things would you change? What don't you like? What do you like? So the fact that we are the only recruitment agency in Australia to have the investors in people accreditation, which, you know, that's cost us tens of thousands of dollars to get that accreditation. But we want to be able to shout that from the hilltops, just what the culture is like in this business. And again, you know, going back to what we're saying, there's nothing in this business I would ask anyone to do that I'm not willing to do myself. And I think that true leadership, leading from the front, is what keeps the culture kind of unite and keeps that team collaboration going. And don't get me wrong, mate, we don't always get it right. I'm not here saying that we've got the perfect model. We don't. We're learning as we go. But you know what people need to realize is we are still a startup. Yes, we might have all this knowledge and experience and, you know, a great number of FTEs at all these offices, but we're still very much learning as we go. And it's that feedback which is critical. You know, we've got close to 250, you know, Google reviews. Again, Google reviews is something that's been around for years and years and years. But, you know, these companies that have been established for 10, 15, 20 years, mate, they might have 2 or 3 Google reviews. So we're utilizing technology. We're utilizing the marketing of the business to really kind of sell our story and our message. You know, look at our TikToks, look at our basically, you know, LinkedIn page. And, you know, again, for LinkedIn to tell us we're literally the fastest privately owned recruitment agency in Australia, I think speaks volumes that, you know, everyone might be, Ephram, does he ever stop posting on LinkedIn? Well, the reason why I'm doing it is because it's making me money. Like, it's making the business money. It's attracting recruiters into the business. Why wouldn't you do it? I don't do Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram. No. My social media is LinkedIn. As sad as that may sound, but it makes money. So why not do it?
100%. But what I'll be honest, but burning question in my head is: have you made any money yet? Is it in profit yet? And if it is, when does it reach that point? Because it sounds like you've pumped so much money into so many people, and yeah, you're gonna do deals, but I know obviously with the payment terms and the way that you're structuring it, and turnover's massive. That doesn't translate into gross profit necessarily the same rate. What is it? What has it actually generated in terms of money in that time? Because you got such an impressive top line view. What's it really doing?
Revenues, mate. Revenues vanity, profit sanity. Like
Yeah.
let's not beat around the bush. This business will absolutely be not just one of the fastest growing recruitment agencies or the fastest growing recruitment agency in Australia, but it'll also be one of the most profitable. Our goals are to be at 1,000 daily timesheets, basically by 30 June next year.
Right.
And then the following June, we want to be at 2,000 daily timesheets. Now that's just purely on a casual blue collar. Now, from a profitability point of view, obviously, a lot of this stuff is a commercial in confidence, but we wouldn't be growing at the rate that we're growing and being able to attract the level of knowledge and experience into our business if we weren't onto a winner. Now, again, the fact that I've got a very solid team of advisors, so from my legal in-house counsel to my accountants, who are all singing from the same hymn sheet, like we're just about to bring in basically a potential north of $100 million in contracts basically into the business in the next 12 to 24 months. Like that's immense. That's huge with a GP of 12%. So again, do the math. There's $12 million gross profit. Everyone can get the calculator out and obviously do how much it's obviously going to cost for an average FTE here in Australia. Now, am I driving around in a Lamborghini? No, I'm not, mate. I'm probably one of the most grounded, down to earth, I guess, recruitment business owners, and that won't ever change. Now, to answer your question, when I was in Sydney, like it's a different market here in WA. It's local, right? So we're a local business supporting local talent, and we'll never lose sight of that. Now, the business again, foundations are down now. Now this is where all the fun starts to happen. Are we going to double in size in the next 18 months? I'd say so, mate. Absolutely. Given the contracts that we've got, given basically, the feedback that we're getting from within industry, the opportunity for us to scale, literally one of Australia's largest recruitment agencies is no longer a pipe dream. It's actually a reality. And I think as long as I can keep surrounding myself with these advisors that have only got my best interest at heart, and my little boy's best interest at heart, and ultimately the business best interest at heart, and then I think really the sky is the limit. And for me personally, mate, that's probably what is the most exciting thing about where we're at with Collar is the opportunity that is in front of us. It is just immense. So I know I've danced around that, mate. I haven't really given you the answer that you were looking for in regards to financials, but
the question is, are you in profit yet, or is it next year? Like, have you met? Because when I interviewed DSP,
2023, mate, is when we'll be basically turning a profit, 100%.
Because life science people isn't too dissimilar to you. David Spencer Percival from Spencer Ogden, and he was very open. He put, I think, 1.6 million in, and it took, I think, 18 months in, and it was about to turn into profit, right? And people want to know, like, it sounds fucking brilliant, but when do you see money off of with a model like yours? So it'll be next year. And look, you're building something for the future. You're building something for legacy. You've already said all these things. So you're not in it for the quick buck, right? You're in it you're building something mega that you want to say, look at what this is, one of the biggest, most impressive businesses across Australia. That takes this kind of focus and effort and financial backing.
100%, mate. Especially inside, like, obviously, an 18-month period as well.
So let's get into the personal side of it, because I really liked where you were going, but I wanted to just get that bit done, right? So, and we are going a bit longer than my normal episodes. I hope you're okay with that. I want to just dig a little bit further. So you mentioned work-life balance. You've got a son. You mentioned you finish at 3. Like, growing in 18 months to 100 staff whilst being a new father, and a husband, and all the things that come with it, there's some real challenge there. So let's go. Yeah. Tell us about your kind of routine, if you like, of how you set your day up, your week up, your month up, to ensure that you're not burning too far at one end and your business isn't suffering, your family life's not suffering. What's your strategy?
Yeah. So for me personally, mate, I've got an incredible wife, and without her by my side, I wouldn't have been able to achieve anything close to what we've done with Collar. And they say what behind every successful entrepreneur is an even obviously greater partner, woman. Like, for me, she's the rock of everything I do. And again, going back to what we're saying earlier, you can't put a price on happiness. So for me to be completely grounded and supported from a home life, even with a little boy now, it is what we're growing together as a family is what makes this so exciting. Previously, mate, and again, like in my previous marriage, we were together 15 years. Probably came into the office 4 times in over 15 years. For me, Amanda, she eats, sleeps, breathes collar as much as I do. It's not all that we talk about, don't get me wrong, but we're both as passionate about this business as each other. So to have that support absolutely is probably fundamentally what has allowed me to put the amount of time and effort into that I've done. Now, initially, when I first started Collar, it was 15, 16-hour days. There's no ifs or buts. Um, but then obviously came along, Finn, my little boy, and has put my whole life into perspective. I'm up at 4 o'clock every day. I have been, I always have been, I think I always will be. I'm an early riser. But rather than putting those couple of hours into, getting myself kind of set up for the day, checking emails, it's literally grounding myself. Obviously, meditation is a key thing that I obviously do. And obviously eating healthy, making sure that I'm taking time out basically to kind of reconnect with myself, and then spending the last couple of hours of a day just kind of rehashing things that have happened during the day. Could I have done that differently? Could I have spoken a bit differently here? What if I gone down that road? And then kind of drawing a line in the sand and going, okay, well, I've got to be present. Literally, there's no point in worrying about what happened yesterday or even thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow. I've got to be present in this current day. So what's happening right now that can have the biggest impact on my life, is something that I'm really passionate about. So again, having that quality of work-life balance, cliche, I know. Weekends now where I was used to working every single weekend, I'm now spending quality time with the family. And I'd love to say I get up to all these wonderful and great things, but mate, I'm a homebody. My wife's a homebody. We love spending time at home with our little boy. And for me, and don't get me wrong, on Sunday night I'm kind of mentally preparing for the week that's ahead. But because I've got such an incredible team around me, um, we all do it together. We're always on regular meetings, and we're always helping each other out. Burnout is so prevalent in recruitment. So how do we manage that? Is it giving somebody a day off? Is it telling them, we're not going to do the sales meeting this week because I know how under the pump everyone is. I know the numbers are there and I know what we're up to. So again, I think it's just having that flexibility and that genuine, I give a shit kind of mentality, mate, to manage burnout to the best of our ability.
Sounds it sounds like you're busy, but yeah, you've got a strategy around it. What about travel? Because if you've got 9 offices, how often are you on the road meeting those offices?
So, wherever I travel, my wife and my little boy comes with me, and that's just a non-negotiable for me. Because for me personally, like I don't want to miss out on the time with my little boy. He's just starting to crawl. He's obviously first words are coming out of his mouth. I'd be absolutely devastated if I missed that because what's the point in me doing all the stuff that I'm doing if I'm not getting that reward? And again, for me, mate, it's always been a lifelong dream for me to be a father. So to actually now have it as a reality, I want to make sure. Again, I'm not the perfect dad, but I want to make sure I give it every opportunity to, support my little boy and my wife in the life that we have ahead of us. And to do that, we all need to be on the same page. Because as soon as it becomes the Ephram show, then it's just another recruitment agency, and it's just giving it all this all the time.
And obviously, at the age your son's at, you can do that. But when he's at school, you won't be able to take him out in the week to go to Melbourne for a few days or whatever. Like, so have you thought about how you'll get around that?
Yeah, so that's why we've set up the management structure that we've
Mm.
got. So again, Peter down in Victoria, 18 years at Hayes. He was a director at Hayes. He's responsible for running the whole of Victoria. And New South Wales, where we've got an executive director in New South Wales in Sydney. We've got a director of New South Wales in Sydney. And again, James and I have worked together before. He's been given the remit of actually growing one of the largest recruitment agencies in Sydney. And they'll all check in with me on a daily basis through Teams or through email or whatever the case may be. My role, I will actually be taking a step back over the next 12 to 18 months and focusing more on the business as opposed to in the business because I've got the support around me. And again, Rachel Jones here in WA. Rachel has arguably got one of the hardest jobs in the business. She's got 3, soon to be 4 offices under her management. A team of about 60, I think, here in WA across the offices. But he's well up for the challenge and he's basically wanting to take on more responsibility in the business. And so I think because we're all kind of growing this together, you know, um, some of the team are going over to Europe. Well, their whole work is distributed between all the other leaders in the business. And I think if you get that second tier of leadership right, then you can actually afford to kind of take a step back and take a breather. So again, our org chart looks like CEO, founder, myself. Underneath me, we've basically got executive director, CFO, COO being Cheryl, who's previously worked for me before, general manager, EGM. We've obviously got payroll manager who's worked for me before, payroll East Coast, payroll West Coast. No, not many agencies have that, mate. But for us, it's about that candidate experience dealing with it. So I think then and below that, you've got the associate directors, below that, team leaders, below that, basically account managers. But everyone's got the career pathway to get all the way to the top.
How many people do BD? How many people are responsible for bringing on the account?
So we've actually now got joining with us in January, is a national business development director. We've just recently had a client engagement manager start with us. Up until that point, it's myself and potentially 2 or 3 other people in the business that have all done the business development. So James over at the East Coast, arguably one of the best BDs I've had the luxury of ever working with. He's done an incredible job. We've launched aged care, healthcare, literally 2.5, 3 months ago. And have already, that team's up to about 17 people now in that team. And we've literally got 10 of the largest accounts in Australia with over 600 vacancies to get stuck into. So there's no one attack that works well. I think because we're getting the candidate experience down pat, and that's what the first 2 months was all about: systems, process, procedures, getting the candidate experience right. Because not that anybody enjoys applying for a job or going through the registration piece or uploading all their tickets and license, but if you can try and make it a little bit more enjoyable and easier, and that process is something that they're happy to do, well, then your speed to market's a lot quicker. But then obviously, if you've got the well-being of the candidate. So again, mate, I'll send you over one of our care packages. We're the only recruiter in Australia, mate, who sends out these care packages. Things like, if they're going to be going to a mine site and being fly out for, a 2-on roster, so they're away for 2 weeks, 14 days, working 11 hours a day on the feet. We supply them things like band-aids for the blisters, and we've got sun cream in there. We've got pillowcases in there because, again, they get to a room that they're sharing with somebody who's doing a 12-hour swing, and it's somebody else's bedding. So pillowcases, water bottles, face masks, collar socks, which are bamboo socks, which obviously help for breathing. So it's all the branded material, all the PPE. Got some of the best PPE that money can buy. Why? Because we want our employees to be looked after. We want them to have a genuine care around their safety. We've clocked up more than 500 days free LTI free days, so lost time injury free days. I don't know of any other recruitment agency, mate, that could boast that solid safety history. And again, the companies we're going up against have got millions to spend on their safety. And the EAP that I talked about earlier, having a 24-hour 365 free EAP, employee assistance program, where anyone can call, whether it's counseling, whether it's financial woes. One thing we do, we've engaged a financial consultancy, so financial planning firm, who gives free financial assistance to all of our candidates. Yes, it comes at a cost. But you've got these candidates who are getting, quite giddy about working 12 hours a day, 2-on-1 rosters in the mine site. Oh, I'm going to earn all this money. Absolutely, you are. It's very lucrative, but you're also going to pay a lot of money in tax. How have you had that type of knowledge, that type of experience, that type of guidance to make sure you don't end up with a huge tax bill at the end of the year? So it's like that we're speaking to candidates, going, what are your pain points? What don't you like about your current providers? And can we do something different? Can we implement that here at Collar? Give you one quick example, mate. We had somebody leave a 1-star Google review on our page about communication. We weren't communicating flights, and they had better experience at Hayes, or whatever the case may be. I actually got on the phone to this individual, and after a few conversations back and forth, I actually brought them in and hired them into a permanent full-time role in our organisation as a candidate care manager. And her job was to ring round every single candidate we had on site and identify any issues, any concerns, any things that we could better ourselves as a new agency. And we implement. We wrote a 10-page basically manual on how we could do things better as a recruiter. So even that feedback, which turned off as a negative feedback, we turned into something positive, which has now given us the framework that the whole business is kind of mirrored on, based on the candidate feedback, the candidate interaction. Again, we're only as good as our last placement. If we go into each and every assignment with that type of methodology, we can't do anything wrong, because we're always going to be educating ourselves and learning as we go.
Ephram, we've hit a 1.5 hours. It's been the longest episode I've recorded for a couple of years. I I could carry on all day. I think you the energy you put into these things and you exude is infectious. It's incredible, and I'm not surprised by where you are. I'm honestly not.
Thank you, mate. It's been an absolute
know
pleasure.
I didn't know you before this, other than to see on LinkedIn, and yeah, it takes certain types of people to run these kind of businesses, and you fit that mold, in my opinion, which is I'm not like you. I haven't got that. I haven't got the same. Oh, that's a word. I'm definitely got drive and energy, but I don't think I think as big as you. Perhaps you've got this there's no barriers to where you're going, which I think is other people will just gravitate towards that because you don't find it very often in people. What I would love to do, and I mean this, is get you back on in the next 12 months, probably towards the back end of maybe in a year's time. This type of journey is one that people will want to check in and find out if it goes how you think it's going to go. And I feel like it's my responsibility to keep people abreast of what you're doing globally.
It would be my pleasure, mate. Honestly, like I said to you before, I've been a big admirer of everything you've done. Love your podcasts and feel very fortunate and very honoured, mate, to even have an invitation to come on here and be given the opportunity to share my story, but obviously share, most importantly, the Collar Talent Group journey to date. So anything I could do to help, to support, to champion, obviously, what you do, mate, I'm only a phone call away.
Thank you. And you just see my dog in the background. That's real working from home. He just jumps on the sofa. In terms of your your time, I know how busy you are. I know you've got a family, but if another recruiter, another recruitment owner, leader, anyone globally, maybe they're not going to be able to work for Collar, but they just want to pick your brains. Are you open to that? Would you give them a little bit of time?
Yeah, 100%, mate. I'm all about mentoring and giving back and do what I can to support. I mean, mate, I've got people who've previously worked for me. There's north of about 20 recruitment entrepreneurs now out there who has worked with me or alongside me or with me basically over the years, who, again, I'm only a phone call away. This is the beautiful thing about, I guess, what we're doing in Australia, what kind of epitomizes the Australian recruitment network is we're all small fish, in a huge pond. It's a very competitive market. It's really challenging and really tough to keep up with the big boys, purely because of their budgets and because of their shareholders and their I guess their history, their track record. So anything we could do as a collaboration to help educate and upskill and bring forward tomorrow's managers today into recruitment is what we're all about. So anything I could do to help, by all means, please look me up on LinkedIn, Ephram Stephenson, or drop me an email anytime at ephram@collar.group.
Amazing. Legend. Well, look, Ephram, have a wonderful end to the year. Have a great Christmas with the family. And I wish you all the best next year. We will get you back on and let's see how that journey unfolds, okay?
Sounds like a plan. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, as always, for listening to today's show. I truly, truly hope that you got value from it. That's the only reason I take time every week, is to ensure that my audience, future and existing recruitment owners, are learning from each other to make this industry that I love so much stronger. Today's episode was brought to you by Hoxo Media. I am the CEO and founder of Hoxo Media, and we are the world's leading content marketing and personal branding agency for recruitment businesses specifically. So we are working with over 200 agencies and 2,000 recruiters right now, both managing the brands, producing content, building written, video, podcast content for niche recruitment agencies all over the world, as well as coaching at a desk level individual recruiters in your businesses how to be better on LinkedIn. That's how to brand themselves. That's how to produce content. That's how to use the opportunity on LinkedIn to get traffic to their profiles and turn that into business. We're coaching people all over the world every single day. If any of that sounds of interest, please do visit www.hoxomedia.com or drop me, Sean Anderson, a personal message on LinkedIn. I would love to talk to you. I'll see you soon.